Hi there. I was going to say good morning, but it just hit noon. So, hey everyone, good afternoon. We're just going to start in about a minute or so. I'm admitting a few other people that are coming in, and then we can get ready to begin. Alrighty, well, we can get started. Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar as we're introducing the adoption of the multi-tiered system of supports model at the Bancroft School. My name is Jill Marshall and I will be moderating today's session. Alongside me today is a Bancroft team that has worked extremely hard to develop the model that tailored to meet the unique needs of our students. Pat Seft, interim principal, Chelsea Corley, senior clinical director, Misty Simmons, social work director, Nicholas Farbour, director of behavioral support, and John Bernard, director of curriculum, instruction, and training. So before we begin, I just want to remind everyone to keep themselves muted. Camera is definitely optional if you feel more comfortable with it on or off. If you do have any questions throughout the duration of this meeting, we'll go over the questions at the end. And just as a follow-up, after this event today, you'll receive the presentation slides as well as an on-demand recording of today's meeting and a condensed version of the MTSS model. So without further ado, let's begin. Pat, I'll let you start. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we come today to share with you about our multi-tiered system of supports. Next slide. So today, what we hope to accomplish and cover with you are these two objectives: the overview of the Bancroft School model and changes to how we describe our mandates. But first, I'd like to just speak a little bit about the Bancroft difference. Most of you are familiar with our school and our program, obviously. It's such that we have a spectrum of services available at the school for all of our students. And most importantly, none of that's going to change, right? So the emphasis here is how MTSS is going to push in and be a part of what we're already doing. So it's just an addition to, nothing is being lost from our services or programs. We have a progression of supports available to all of our students, and we want to make sure that it's a sliding progression of we're meeting the students where they're at, based on their needs on any given day, week, month, or year. So again, just to emphasize, this is being interwoven with what we already have, and nothing is being lost from adding this new model. Next slide. All right, so with MTSS, we have 3 levels of support, as you can see here on your screen. Tier 1 is the universal standard base level where we project all students starting at. All right, and then from there, depending on their needs and resources and level of involvement, they will progress to tier 2 or tier 3 as needed. And the more intense, the more challenges that come with our students, they'll move into the next tier. What's important to understand here is that we're constantly meeting. We have what we call clinics, where we bring the team together internally, and we're discussing, reviewing student cases, and deciding what next steps need to be made, what our next plan of action for our students, or if they're at a level and they're progressing and doing well, they'll stay, pat. So tier two would be smaller group lessons, therapies, formal consultation, or even more robust behavior supports. And then tier three is for our most challenging students that we have. Highly individualized supports. It's more intensive. And in a minute, I'll turn it over to Nick to dive a little deeper into some of those supports. Final thing I want to say is I just want to make sure that I reiterate and everyone understands it's a fluid continuum, right? So students can move up and down on this continuum and these levels. It's not willy nilly just put a student here or there. It's very data driven, looking at where the student's at, the data behind it, personal observation, things of that nature. So again, we're incorporating this model to give our students, to allow them to demonstrate their best selves or demonstrate their success on a regular basis. All right. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Nick. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Pat, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Favor. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health. Our MTSS model is going to include 3 domains of support that we're going to discuss today. And each of those domains will have a tiered approach that you just saw Pat present on the last slide. The first domain of support that we're going to talk about is PBIS. The Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, or PBIS for short, is a new way for us to describe the ABA services that we provide at the Bancroft School. Now, as Pat mentioned, rest assured that we will continue to offer the same ABA services, but our hope is with this new model, provide greater clarity around the spectrum of services that we offer here. Now, that spectrum is going to range from our tier 1, which will include baked-in support, like specialized staff training and classroom management systems, and motivating our students to demonstrate pro-social behavior. Up to tier 2, which will include more general ABA strategies that focus on richer motivating systems and minimizing the impacts of challenging behavior. All the way up to our tier 3. That will include highly individualized interventions that are informed by an FBA and focus on reducing challenging behavior that has become a barrier to learning. This tiered approach provides more structure and transparency around the variety of ABA supports that we offer here. Next slide, please, Jill. In addition to the tiered approach of service that we offer, all students in the school will be participating in a school-wide initiative focused on our new school rules. And you can see those rules here. Be safe, be kind, be flexible, and try your best. Teachers will begin to embed lessons that focus on teaching and modeling our new school rules. Students will be provided opportunities to demonstrate our school rules and be acknowledged with praise and provided a Bancroft buck, which you can see here. These Bancroft bucks can then be used to purchase rewards at our new school rewards store called the Buck Stop. The Buck Stop's going to include a variety of toys, fidgets, snacks. And in addition to those rewards, students can also use their Bancroft bucks to purchase special privileges during the school day, such as access to computer or iPad, or to go for walks or to the playground, that will be facilitated by our teachers. Starting now, you'll begin to see and hear PBIS language in the IEP meetings and IDTs that provide a tiered assignment based on the level of ABA support that student is being recommended. We're excited to adopt this PBIS model and join the thousands of other schools across the country already using it. Up next, Chelsea's going to talk about our other 2 domains. Chelsea?
Thank you, Nick. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chelsea Corley. I'm the Senior Clinical Director for our Bancroft Network of Schools. And I'm going to speak with you today about our other 2 domains. The first being related services, inclusive of speech, occupational, and physical therapies, as well as next we'll talk about our social emotional learning domain. But first, our related services, and this is where I think we're going to see the biggest change in some of the terminology that may come up in the IEPs. And this is really one of the reasons we wanted to get in front of you all today before we really get into the thick of IEP season, just so that we're all in lockstep and everyone sort of understands what's being suggested or recommended by the team. So our universal support for related services is integrated program support. And what that means is even if we're in a classroom where none of the students have speech therapy, that teacher still has access to a speech therapist to make suggestions around maybe visual usage or how to make the language that they're using more intelligible to the class as a whole. Alternatively, maybe a teacher is really struggling with a very wiggly class or a few students in the class that are really wiggly during the day. Even if those students don't have occupational therapy, that teacher still has access to our occupational therapist or one of our occupational therapists to provide that integrated program support. This is baked in and it's distinct from consultation, right? Because it's not necessarily student specific. It's not mandated. That's what we see at Tier 2. So, if let's say that OT that's providing that Tier 1 support, notices something, or those Tier 1 supports that are being provided to the class aren't really making a difference for a couple of those students, then the team will look at elevating that student to a Tier 2 level. We'll start talking about how we can have regular consultation and really kind of build out that student's resources by adding that in. And our other Tier 2 level support might be mandated group therapy, right? So it's certainly more intensive than that integrated program support, but is provided to a group. For some students, though, of course, they need more, right? So that's where we have our Tier 3, which of course is also mandated, but would be that individualized either pull out or push in model. Now, one thing that we wanted to make sure to touch on is that even though we're talking about related services as one domain, a student may be in a different tier for each of these services, right? Not all of our students receive PT, so they would be, potentially at Tier 1 for physical therapy. And someone that same student might be a Tier 2 for OT and a Tier 3 for SLP. In addition, it's important to notice that while we're talking about 3 domains, that does mean that our students might be at a different tier level across these domains, right? So a student, let's say that's at Tier 3 for speech and OT, PT Tier 1, might also be in the PBIS domain Tier 2, right? So a student can be in a different place. This allows us to articulate a student's need based on a domain that's truly individualized, right? So this is part of how we're crafting a really individualized approach for our students and really being able to organize our resources accordingly. Next slide, please. So moving on to social emotional learning. This is, again, we start at Tier 1, right, where in all of our classrooms at a level that's developmentally appropriate for that student or that class, we have social emotional curriculum being provided to our students. That is baked in. That's something that we offer to everyone. Again, we also have integrated program support provided by our school psychologists or school counselors. They are able to check in with teachers that are maybe like, hey, I'm noticing, the students aren't really picking up on this part of the curriculum. How could we adapt it? How could we modify it? What might we suggest? So again, sort of that integrated program support at a Tier 1 level is very baked in. For some students, though, of course, they need more, right? We have certainly seen an influx of students who have needs that are very related to mental health and really needing to have that support in order to access their education meaningfully. So for those students that really need a little bit more, we've dedicated a significant subset of our classrooms to be dedicated socially emotional focused classrooms. These classrooms have enhanced exposure to our SEL curriculum. They have more frequent group therapies, they have more frequent lessons, and and overall additional training provided to the staff on trauma-informed care and things like that. Everyone gets some, but there's definitely more of a focus in those classrooms. Some of those students may have a social emotional support plan. We might see some goals developed here that are dropped into the IEP or suggested to the IEP to really enhance their needs there or meet their needs there. For some of our students, they may experience occasional crises related to their mental health, right? And that's where we have our tier 3 intervention. And that's where we may be looking at additional staffing to help support that student and ensure that they're supported throughout their day. And they would likely have an individualized social emotional intervention plan. So how are we going to support the student in the event of a crisis? So a student may move up in this continuum, like all of our domains, but our goal, right, is ultimately for them to be as independent as possible. So anytime a student moves up, we're also still looking at how can we move them back down the continuum towards independence. We want support where we need it and independence where we don't. So that is sort of the breakdown for our related services and social emotional learning. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Social Work, Misty, and she's going to talk us through how our teams make all this stuff happen.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yep.
So as Chelsea mentioned, we are always looking at how to move students within the continuum. So you might be wondering, how are we monitoring that? We have set up a system in which there are classroom level clinics, meaning on a standing basis, the classrooms come together, all those different team members, and identify what's working within the classroom for each student and for the classroom as a whole. During that time, they're identifying whether those tiers are still appropriate. If they identify that a student needs a little bit more or less of the current supports, or might need to move within those tiers, they will schedule a separate student level clinic. That's an internal meeting where, again, we're meeting and we're focusing more on that specific student and brainstorming how to provide those appropriate supports, how to make adjustments based on the student's needs. Once we identify that there may need to be significant changes or changes in levels, we would then schedule an IDT meeting, interdisciplinary team meeting, where those additional supports, modification, and the data collection is adjusted, which may lead to an IEP meeting if necessary, right? If we need to move goals or change significant things within the IEP. Missing anything?
Yeah, no, I think you got it. All right, so that's really the nuts and bolts of it. I believe, Jill, you've been monitoring some questions maybe coming in. What can we answer for the group here?
So I did get 2 questions sent to me, and one is just clarifying that a student can be in more than one tier in different areas. So for example, it could be tier 1 on one side, tier 2 on the other side of the triangle, and then tier 3 on the other, and that's okay.
You're exactly right, Jill. That's how we've envisioned this. And it's not to get crazy with categories, but again, we really want to be able to articulate the unique needs of each student, and so that we're able to really plan for the holistic care of that student. So yes, they would be assigned to unique tiers by each domain.
All right, and there was one more question. Someone had asked if the students would be moved around to different classrooms depending on the different tiers that they're moving in between.
That's a great question. Not necessarily. For the most part, the answer would be no. Certainly, if there's a classroom it's not working out to be a good fit, or the students need something different, then that's certainly something that we'll talk about as a team and try to figure out how best to meet that student's needs. I would say the only exception to a student getting moved is, let's say we do have the ability we have the space in one of our SDL classrooms, and we have a student identified that really requires that tier 2 level of social emotional support, then we would look at moving that student in there so they can have that enhanced access to the curriculum that's a part of that classroom. If those classrooms are full, we'll figure out how best to adapt and modify and provide those supports otherwise until such a availability opens up. Aside from that, though, we don't envision that this would require additional movement.
All righty. Are there any other questions that none of you didn't really chat through? They felt like maybe you wanted to kind of wait till the end and ask any questions. Now would be your time. Alrighty.
One other thing that did come up, Misty just reminded me of it, so thank you. One thing that we do want to also make sure that we're really the reason we wanted to get in front of you guys today is, again, so that you're familiar with the language that you're likely going to be hearing and seeing as our teams discuss the proposed IEP in our meetings. One of the things that you'll see in our IEP mandates is related to related services, is you'll likely see, like, if let's say a student has group speech therapy, you'll see that language. You'll see tier 2 group speech in the mandate section. So that's just to kind of help clarify what you can expect to see.
Thank you, Chelsea. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, thank you all for your time today. Again, you'll be getting a follow-up email with the presentation slides, as well as an on-demand recording of today's webinar and a condensed version of the MTSS model. So hope everyone has a great day. We'll be talking to you all soon. Take care.
Here.
Thank you. Bye.